Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Rob Wood. I'm the Vice President of Sales for ClicData, and I'll be hosting today's webinar, Leveraging Professional Services with Your Firm. Today, we'll be spotlighting everything we can do for you on a professional services basis and why that might be important to you. Today's topic will be presented by Sri Neve, ClicData's Head of Vice President of Professional Services. First things first, if you'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a chat window. Feel free to ask us any questions there. If you have any video or audio issues, feel free to let us know. We will be moderating that as well. We are recording today's session, so you can feel free to look back at it at a later time, share it with a colleague, etc., and we'll be more than happy to send out the recording link to everybody that has registered for the webinar today. This webinar is intended for those companies that are looking to hire ClicData's team for data management, dashboard building, and more importantly, to help streamline your BI implementation process, put a plan in place, and get the best ROI that you possibly can out of your business intelligence, data visualization, and data management project. Today's agenda, we're going to be reviewing ClicData, a business reporting and data visualization tool, review of our approach for professional services and how it's unique and actually very beneficial for most companies. We're going to give some examples with how we've worked with retail firms, law firms, and ad agencies, and how our professional service projects and guidance help them achieve not only a great ROI, but also actually exceeded their expectations. A few words about ClicData. ClicData, we are the world's first cloud-based, 100% cloud-based business intelligence, BI, and dashboarding solution. We were founded in 2009. We're currently publishing 1 million plus managed KPIs and over 100,000 dashboards an hour. 97% of the people that use ClicData would refer this to a colleague or associate. ClicData's approach is simple. Connect to all data anywhere, any source. Pull that into a data warehouse that's included in every subscription, allowing you to prepare and join and create multiple data visions, if you will, like mashups, etc., and then visualize those data in publishing dashboards and reports and being able to share those. It's a completely comprehensive solution that is unlike any other in the market. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sri and let him talk a little bit more about services.
Thanks, Rob, for the introduction. So before we discuss about the use cases and a few different sectors that we have worked with, I just want to introduce you in a nutshell to what we do as professional services. As part of professional services, we as ClicData experts, we take on an entire project for you, which could include anything from collecting or connecting different data sources into one single source. We end up creating a data warehouse for you. We create the dashboards that are required based on the audience, and eventually we help you automate the entire process so you can collaborate the work that has been done with the audience. At the end of the webinar, we'll also talk in detail about the process that we use for the projects that we have taken. But over the course of the three sectors that I'm covering, we're going to talk about the approach that we used, the problem that that particular client who came to us was facing, and how our services team engaged with the client to help resolve that problem. And not only just resolve the problem, provide additional suggestions in such a way so that they could maximize their investment with ClicData. The first sector that we're going to talk about is on retail sector. The problem that this particular client approached us was the challenge with IoT and distributed data. What I mean by that was, as a retailer, you end up working with a lot of different distributors. The data received from the distributors, in many cases, is not standardized. There's no uniformity against it, which makes it quite difficult to do any kind of analytics on top of that. The second issue that this particular client was facing was IoT information was not available as feeds. They had sensors across different aisles to measure in-traffic movement, to measure how many ins and outs of customers they were having. But the IoT will send the data back to a server, a local server, and the client had to wait until the end of the day to upload the data to get any sort of analytics or make any decisions on top of that. With that as the approach, we're going to talk about both the problems individually. The first problem about the challenge of distributed data. As you can see on the screen, distributor 1 ended up sending data where the locations were abbreviated, or they ended up using codes for the location. For the SKU numbers as well, rather than writing in the product name, they ended up using SKU numbers, which many distributors end up doing. And for distributor 2, they had the entire location name and they had the entire product name. Trying to combine this data and get analytics out of it, if I had to see how many chocolates am I selling, one of them is a code, one of them is a text, it becomes quite challenging for me to understand or get any analytics out of it. And the same for location-wise information. If I have to see which location has been performing better, it becomes again challenging. So having worked with the client and understanding the different distributors and the different formats that they get the data in, this client was working with around 45 different distributors. We ended up creating a single mapping sheet for all these distributors. We created a mapping sheet for location. We ended up creating a mapping sheet for SKU numbers to product name. With the mapping sheet, we were able to get all the data cleansed up and eventually come up with something that looks cleaner and also allows the retailer to identify which distributor the data is coming from. With that investment, with that particular project, before ClicData, they were doing daily Excel sheets, collating the data manually, uploading the data onto a drive manually. They were also creating the reports manually, and every time they ended up using Excel VLOOKUP to do some sort of mapping. But after ClicData, this uploads that were coming from distributors, they started going straight to Google Drive. We figured out a way on how we can combine them and get the data pushed to Google Drive. We also provided a mapping sheet, which could help with the fusion of the entire data set. And at the end of it, we ended up creating a report that was available at any point of time. Just to give you some sort of context on the numbers that they ended up putting on this, initially they were spending an hour to 2 every day trying to get this reports collected. With ClicData, they signed on for a 40-hour project where we did a fixed cost project for them, where we ended up doing everything from start to end at a certain cost. And what that led to is a total saving of $18,000 just in the first year. If they would have continued doing that for the next few years, or if the number of distributors that they were working with would have expanded, definitely the return on investment with ClicData would have been greater. The second use case about IoT. It's a challenge that we've seen in a lot of other retail sectors as well. Most of the IoTs prefer to send data to USBs, or they just prefer to send data to a local server in a CSV file, which makes it challenging for the client to get real-time analytics on top of this. So this was a data management project for us, where we had to identify the operational flow issues. Based on the issues that they were having, we decided that setting up an FTP server would be an ideal way for them to work around this particular issue and have the data from IoT sent straight to that FTP server, which could now feed back to ClicData. And thus the client can have some sort of real-time analytics on top of this. A similar analysis for the first problem, this client was spending an hour a year every day. A 20-hour project with ClicData helped them to streamline and automate the whole process. So they ended up saving $10,000 again in the first year itself. Just goes to say, if you're doing any sort of redundant work, if you see within your organization, you're spending an hour or 2 hours every day on the same task, there has to be an automation done on top of this. And this can be done either through an initial upfront investment so that we can identify what are the ways to automate the whole process. But in the long run, which seems like an hour every day, definitely turns back into a lot more saving that you can use for your organization. Just an example of a dashboard that we ended up creating for this particular client, and where they could see based on the retail data that they were getting, which were the top locations, how were the sales from last year to current year. They also had item brand performance. We ended up creating 4 to 5 dashboards for this particular client. The next sector we're going to talk about is legal services, or I could even generalize it and talk, this could be applicable to any kind of firms providing professional services. A challenge that we've seen, and in this case as well, the challenge that this particular client was having was with data discrepancy. Here, the example was the legal firm. They were using multiple tools. They were having a CRM system. They had Excel. They had Google Forms for people to collect information. Even in terms of revenues, they had a billing tool. They had HR system. The issue with this multiple collection points, what happens is if you have a CRM tool, it's easy to identify a customer in a CRM tool. But if your field reps are going out on the field and they're collecting also new customers on Google Forms or any other methods, there could be a discrepancy where the information on CRM might not match the information that you have on Google Sheet. Or if you're using a billing tool and a CRM tool, the information on the billing tool might not match the information on the CRM tool. So it's an issue where the same customer is displayed in different ways in different locations. And this is what we were trying to solve with this particular client. And again, the second item we were trying to solve is a redundancy in bill items. A lot of projects that these legal services providers were doing, those were billable items for their customers. But since it's a manual approach of deciding what items are billable and what items are not billable, they ended up losing revenue out there. So this is the two areas what we identified where there was a loss. Either there was a revenue loss or there was information loss. So when we started with this project, our approach was trying to make sure we identify the struggle areas for this client. What are the two areas the client wants to improve? They want to make sure that the revenue is generated and at the right time when required. And they want to make sure that there's no information disparity. With that two broad areas of investigation, we found out where the revenue loss was happening. There were work items which were supposed to be billed, not billed. Either there were work items that needed to be charged at a certain hourly rate based on the employee who was working on, but they were not charged with that particular rate. Or there were invoices which were left unpaid for more than X number of days, and no one was aware about that. And the same on the information run. There were missing contacts, information, which were never sent to sales team so that they could follow up because maybe the contacts were missing phone numbers or they were missing company names and the sales team could not do due diligence to go ahead and approach them. Or there was just missing information across different systems, making it difficult to identify which of them was high paying customer, which one was not a high paying customer. For this problem, what we ended up doing was we started with data aggregation. First, we were like, let's go ahead and collect all the data into one single source, that is ClicData. Once we had that, we had to figure out what is a common link between these data disparity sources. Email address is one unique identifier that we discovered that remains fairly constant amongst different systems. So email address was identified. In terms of invoices, we realized that the employee is always there. So we could get the hourly rate for the employees. And we can end up creating a central warehouse where all this information talks with each other. Once we had the information, it was easy for us to set certain rules so that when the information was missing, those contacts get flagged in. And if the rates were not right or if the invoices were not paid, those invoices get flagged again. Once we had that, all we had to do was create some dashboards and make sure we send notifications to the client. And this was not a reactive notification, but rather than waiting for the client to get the data at the end of the day. Anytime there was a misinformation, if the contact did not have the right details, we sent out the alert right then to the client saying that this contact was missing certain information, or if the hourly rate was not right, we would send out the work items to the client, or if it was not billed, again, we would notify the client right then, so they could go ahead and make changes. With this approach that we ended up taking, the client signed on for a $5,000 package with us, which included data management, dashboard creation, and publication. The potential revenue that we discovered that ClicData helped them gain back is around $40,000 in unbilled items, which were not billed and which finally got billed or got billed later on. This was over a course of a year. And there were around 35,000 potential revenue missing out in contacts, where the contact information was not right. The sales team could not follow up on the prospects, or in future when the prospects don't have enough information, they got notified and they got changed. The return on investment here is 14x, which again goes to say the same thing that we did on the first piece, where the initial investment might seem time consuming, might seem as a redundant effort here, but once you put in the initial investment, you set up the right automation, you set up the right rules, it gets back the return within no time. The third case we are going to talk about is about consulting agency. In this case, it was specifically a marketing agency, but I generalize this for consulting agencies. Consulting agencies that we've worked across could be anywhere from a marketing consulting, a sales consultant who help clients set up HubSpot, Keep, Sugar CRM, could be financial consultants who manage a lot of different clients on QuickBooks, Xero, Stripe. Any of these consultants, the way we define them is if you're managing multiple clients under your portfolio, and if you are creating the same dashboards, or if you have more than 10 clients for QuickBooks, you're a consultant for QuickBooks. You need to be able to provide a report for QuickBooks to your clients. The challenge here was trying to deploy templates. A lot of consultants that we've worked with, and this consultant as well, they wanted to provide dashboard as a service. Today, they were focused on providing consulting services on how best to use Keep, or in terms of marketing agency, how best to optimize your ads, which regions to run the ad. But they saw an opportunity here that there is a possibility to provide reports to their client, additional reports that they as industry experts know of, and they can provide additional value to the client on top of the reports that you get from this existing system. But rather than creating custom reports for each one of them, how could you end up creating a single report that fits everyone? And the reason for creating a single report that fits everyone is ease of replication and ease of scalability. Today you have 10 clients, but if you want to expand to 30 different clients from QuickBooks, you should be able to use the same report and easily provide that at an additional cost to your clients. We ended up using a consulting approach here, where we started by understanding what is the need for the client. Once we had that, who are the clients of the clients, or who are the customers for that particular client, and what are they doing? We try to profile each client to make sure we understand the issues that their clients are facing today and the issues that they're trying to solve if they had to get a report that was an additional report based other than the systems that they're working on. Once we have that information, our investigation went to industry norms and practices. What are the typical industry norms and practices? We wanted to make sure that at least we get the base metrics out there. And on top of the base metrics, we used the knowledge that this particular client was having based on his or her experience in the sector that they're working on for those additional KPIs. Finally, we drafted out a BI lifecycle plan for them, and we ended up creating several templates so that they could have a template that fits for all the clients. What this provides you, just in terms of return on investment, the client did end up spending around $10,000 in consulting services, but the revenue generated now was per customer, because the dashboards that they got, they could sell it to each customer that they had. It was their choice to charge them $1,000 per dashboard, Obviously, if you are providing services based on the capacity and what kind of clientele you have, you could choose to charge your client for as an add-on for these additional reports that you serve. Here, this client was able to charge $3,000 per client, and they had around the immediate benefits that they saw was around 40 clients who ended up using the reports for around 40,000 rupees. And further, they had a potential now that they could generate revenue at any point of time by expanding their client base and target other clients who could be in need of this same dashboard. So it was a one-time investment. They got few dashboards ready. Once they had the template ready, all they had to go do was duplicate the template for each and every new client that they onboarded and keep on generating revenue for them. A few examples of this report. One is the marketing consultant report, where you could see we decided on focusing on the most key aspects of what's the customer acquisition cost, what's the return on investment. Then in terms of a sales consulting, we focused on the performance of the leads that they were working on. With that, we talk about these three different use cases that we have worked with. I do want to talk about what we offer. We offer a few different packages. We offer a dedicated account manager package where you could rely on a member or team of ClicData business analysts to be your dedicated BI expert. We also offer a project-based service where you could engage with ClicData for a limited project where we do everything from start to end, get the project delivered for you. We offer an expert services package, which is a consulting package, where rather than having a predefined project, if you want to be flexible and use ClicData experts at any point of time, either for training or for doing some dashboard work, if you just need additional hands instead of your internal employees who could help you with data management and dashboard building on ClicData, you could go ahead with an expert service package. And we also offer a BI strategy assessment if you are not sure at this stage on what's the right way to go ahead and implement BI within a specific department within your organization. And if you need us to come in, hold meeting with your stakeholders and draft out the requirements so that you have a BI strategy for your organization, we do offer a BI strategy assessment as well. The different rates for different packages, but just a guideline, it goes up to $100 an hour and varies based on the package that you end up taking with ClicData. I do want to talk about our approach based on our packages. What we do is the first approach is always doing a scoping. We try to understand the client, we try to understand the stakeholders involved, we get out an implementation plan. Once we have that, we go ahead and do data exploration. We get the data sets connected. And based on the data exploration and the data sets connected, we provide consulting services on dashboard metrics if you already don't have them, if you need some sort of suggestions on how best to visualize the data, or what kind of metrics would make most sense to me. Since we already know about your stakeholders, the issues your stakeholders are having, the data sources that you work with, we can help you draft a dashboard mock that you could use to build yourself or engage with ClicData to build further. And the final step is if you go ahead with building the dashboard with ClicData, we have the data sets connected, we know what you want to visualize, we go ahead and build the dashboard for you that you can use within your organization. With that, I'll hand back to Rob for any questions that we might have.
Thanks, Sri. That was great. I appreciate the whole content, and it was very interesting for us to learn. I do have a couple questions if we have time to answer those. One of them is, what does a company need to provide to ClicData in order to get started with a professional services package?
That's a great question, Rob. So for us to get started with the professional service package, first thing we need to know is who are the stakeholders involved in the dashboard and what's the purpose of the dashboard. That's the basic we need. We need to understand why you're building this dashboard and for whom you're building it. Once we have that, if you have data sources that you already know of, or if you already know of certain KPIs that your stakeholders are requesting, a list of that would be great, but that's not a prerequisite. Just to get started, we need to know the purpose of the dashboard and who the dashboard is going to be built for.
Great. Another question that came over is, for the Internet of Things IoT project implementation, how does ClicData connect to the FTP server?
ClicData has an FTP connector. We have more than 50 native connectors on native applications that we can connect to. And we also have a few generic connectors, such as web service connectors. So as long as the application you're using has an API or has a Node-RDBC driver, ClicData can connect to it, even if we don't have a native connector for it. Right? In case of FTP, we already had a connector, so it was as simple as just setting up an FTP server and connecting straight to the FTP server to get the details.
And then our last question that's come across is, how long does this typical professional services project take?
Typical professional services, I want to say, if you're trying to build 2 dashboards, up to 10 to 15 indicators on a dashboard for one specific department, we're able to get that dashboard delivered to you within 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, it depends on what kind of data sets you're using, if the data is clean, or if there is any data cleansing required on top of that. But over the past clients that I've worked with, I would say the average delivery time for your 1 or 2 dashboards is 2 to 3 weeks.
Perfect, thank you. So one last question, we'll close it out. We do have wanting to know, do we offer a trial and how long does that last? ClicData does have a full feature, full functioning trial available. If you go to ClicData.com, in the middle of the page as well as the top right, you'll see the availability to click a button that says Start Trial Now. Our trial lasts for 15 days. You do get full access to our services team to help you set up your project and get things going, and we can also help you with quoting out if you'd like additional services with that. We do have the ability to do full self-service. That's kind of how we started. So we do have a very extensive video tutorial library, a help wiki, as well as in-app chat, which is a favorite feature as well. With that, I want to thank everybody for their time. Thank everybody for joining us today. This has been recorded. We'll send the link out to everyone as well. Thank you, Shri, and thank you very much for joining us.